Hey everyone, Cleo here, and today we're talking about my anticipated releases for 2023. Now, I have quite a lot on here. I think I have 43 on there. I had 44 originally, but then I decided to remove one because I'm not going to include any books for which I haven't read the first book in the series. So if a second book in the series, third book, whatever comes out and I haven't yet read the first book, I'm not including them in this list. Those, I can already tell you, they won't be in here. I'm not up to date. So let's not delude myself by saying I will be up to date in time for that release. So in that sense, it cannot really be an anticipated release, in my opinion, though it definitely is, but okay. For this list, I'm happy to exclude them so that we can kind of get through it a little bit quicker. I won't go through too many details with these books just because, 43 books, it is a lot of books and I don't want this video to be overly long. But so I'm gonna go through these ones per month, and I will also for each month kind of indicate whether I have any priorities within that month or not. So let's start off immediately with the month of January. I'm not going through them in any sort of an order. I'm just going through them as I wrote them down. So the release date will be somewhere in January. It can be the beginning of the month, the end of the month. If you're interested in picking up this book, then definitely check it out on like Goodreads or something like that to kind of get more of an idea of its release date, or just like immediately pre-order it. So first one is Song of Silver Flame Like Night by Emily Wen Zhao. So this is Chinese world building. It is a young adult book which kind of deals with thematics of colonialism, and it deals with hidden magic. Our protagonist, I believe, has a tattoo that was left by her mother, but it's in some sort of, it contains a character that nobody can read until this one boy shows up who can read it and who thinks that she has some hidden magic that can help overthrow the colonial forces. The next book is The Daughters of Izdihar by Hadir El-Sbai, and this is a priority for me. It is actually on my January TBR. So this is Arabian world building. It deals with feminism. It's got elemental magic in it. It is queer. So it's the first book in a duology. It's set in a modern Egypt. We are following two women, a spoiled aristocrat and a poor bookshop worker. And it talks about their common cause, the struggle for women's rights. So I absolutely love that Egyptian setting. Common cause being feminism, yeah, absolutely. Forbidden elemental magic sounds right up my alley, so I'm really looking forward to it. It is queer as well, so that is also a very much a plus for me. Next up we have Secret Project Number 1 by Brandon Sanderson, of which I'm not gonna say anything because this is the first book in a series of 4. I mean, it's not a series, but there's 4 secret projects that are gonna come out by Brandon Sanderson in 2023. It was part of the big Kickstarter that he did in 2021, I want to say, or maybe already 2022. Yeah, beginning of 2022, I think. And so I got the ebooks within that Kickstarter, and so I'm going to be reading them throughout 2023. I am one of the people who wants no information about the secret projects in advance. I've kind of been spoiled for some of the titles, but luckily I've already forgotten about them immediately. I have a vague idea of what the covers will look like. I know nothing about the synopsises, so I'm going to keep it that way. Please keep it that way for me as well. If you're interested, you can find more information about them on Brandon Sanderson's channel, for example, because he did give more information about each of these as the Kickstarter was going on. Next up we have A Dark Academia, so another fantasy, The Cloisters by Katie Hayes. This is a dark academia taking place within the research world, and we have our protagonist who was supposed to do some sort of an internship, I think, over the summer at, I think she believed that it was going to be at the Met, but it turns out to be at the Cloisters, which does research into fortune telling, into divination, and into tarot cards. And so it's a dark academia dealing with like the competitiveness of the academic world, and apparently there are some weird conclusions that they are reaching when it comes to the tarot research. Next up we have a book that's absolutely a cover buy, not really because I haven't bought it, but it's in here because I'm really intrigued about the cover, and that is God Killer by Hannah Kaner. This is a fantasy book which, as the title suggests, is all about killing gods. So gods live amongst people, it seems like, and we have people who have it as their job to kill the gods, and then one of the people we are following is somebody who's trying to kill a god but she cannot, and I don't really know the reason why, and the other is an ex-god killer who's sent back into the fray for reasons, and he meets up with this other god killer, and the god and a young girl who's traveling with them for some reason. So I don't know too much about this one, and it will say that as a consequence, when I was going through all of these synopsises again, it is lower on my priority because I just don't know too much about it, and so I don't know too well whether it would work for me or not. Next up we have Stolen by Anne Helen Lystadius. I don't know about the pronunciation, that's probably wrong. This is a translated novel from Swedish. It is set in Sweden. We are following indigenous people, we are following the Sami people, and we're looking at basically a Sami woman, I believe, who is fighting injustice because she is keeping I want to say reindeer, and I'm not entirely sure whether it was reindeer. But I think it was reindeer, and so reindeers have a special spiritual status within the Sami people and their culture and their traditions, and so some people have been killing off reindeer, and so when they report this to the police kind of does like shrug, and they consider it just like stolen property. They don't really put much value to this crime, and so at one point our protagonist is fed up with this and kind of wants to fight this injustice. Then we have The Terraformers by Annalee Newitz, which was added to this list when I watched another anticipated releases video, which I since haven't done because that would just mean that this list was going to grow endlessly at some point. So this is a sci-fi novel. It has a dual timeline, it's full of secrets, but I feel like it's also to some extent going to be wholesome because it's set to be for like readers of Becky Chambers, for example. I believe in this one we have the prior timeline in which we have like the ecological crisis, and then our protagonist is looking for a solution, and in that search he finds this sort of like hidden volcano city or something like that. And then the second timeline is from, I believe, one of her sort of like research assistants, so to speak, and her relationship with with a person from the volcano city. But I'm really vague on the entire scope of this book, on everything that's taking place within it, but the idea of a sort of like more wholesome sci-fi is what made me interested in this one. Then we have The Bandit Queens by Barini Shroff. This is a book taking place within India. It is taking place in a small town, and this woman, her husband kind of up and left without informing anyone, and so the people in the town kind of speculate that she killed him, and she's quite okay to let those rumors just simmer around because, you know, people are avoiding her and she is able to live the life that she leads without having to deal with the annoying opinions of others. Let them have their opinions as long as they don't share them with her. However, all of a sudden women start showing up at her door wanting tips on how to kill their husbands. This sounds amazing. It's definitely one that's higher on my priority, but not so high that I made it a priority, because I did mark the ones that I like absolutely want to get to in a different color in my spreadsheet. I didn't go that far with this one, but it's definitely one that I would love to fit into the year. Then we have The Keeper 6 by Kate Elliott. This is a novella about dragons. It is about a badass mother figure who, when her son is kidnapped, wants to go after him and rescue him from the Dragon Lord. She used to be part of some sort of a coven. It's called the Hex, but as far as I can see, it kind of is another word for a coven, but she kind of hasn't really communicated with them anymore since she abandoned that lifestyle, and so now she kind of goes back into that lifestyle to try and rescue her son. It's a novella, it's got a dragon in it. I will not be reading it in 2023 because I'm saving it for my dragon-based read-along that will happen in the Year of the Dragon, so starting February 2024. And then the final book for January is The Last Tale of the Flower Bride by Roshani Chokshi. This is a book that I don't fully have a handle on. It's a fantasy, it's her adult fantasy debut. It's got a lot of family secrets, it seems like. And so our protagonist is married to this guy, and they basically made a pact upon marriage that he would never ask about her family history. However, when her parents pass away, they kind of go to the family home, and what he sees there, who he sees there, make him question everything and make him want to figure out what actually happens in her past. I'm a bit vague on what's going on there. It seems to also have something to do with dream magic, but I could be wrong about that. It is also a little bit of a lower priority for me. So January was absolutely the month in which I have the most releases, so the other months are going to be much more reasonable, hopefully. Next up we have the month of February. The main book in this one, though it is not, I'm not putting it down as a priority, is A Day of Fallen Night by Samantha Shannon. So many people are talking about it. It is a fantasy book. It is a prequel to Priory of the Orange Tree. Samantha Shannon, I believe, is going to write 3 books within this world. So she wrote Priory, now we're getting a prequel, and I guess we're getting a sequel or something like that later on. And as it's a prequel, I don't have too much to say about this one. So Priory of the Orange Tree took place in a world in which we had dragons, and in which we had more like the Western style dragon, the wyvern, and then the more like Eastern style Asian type dragon. And the West fears dragons, the East worships dragons, and there's this one giant dragon that was a big like threat to this world. However, he has been slumbering for a very long time, and I don't even remember what happened. Like I don't even remember what the rules were about him awakening, but in any case he awakens, shit goes down. But so I'm guessing this is a prequel, so we're looking into the past, but based on what I read in terms of its synopsis, we're not even that far into the past, because one of our protagonists from the Priory of the Orange Tree is also mentioned within this prequel synopsis, so we're not that far in the past from Priory of the Orange Tree itself. Next up we have The Whispering Muse by Laura Purcell. So this is a book taking place in Victorian London. It is it's not a fantasy again, so this is mystery, I guess, thriller maybe, historical. This is taking place in the theater, and we're looking at a cursed actress. It is said that she has made a pact with the muse of theater, but that one day the muse might come to collect her payments. The wife of the owner of the theater is very suspicious about this young actress and her talent, and so she sends her maiden to kind of spy on this actress. It sounds very atmospheric. I am debating whether I'm gonna read this one or not, just because theater doesn't really work for me in books, and so it sounds amazing, but I know that I've been burned by theater in books so many times, so it'll probably be one that I'll like wait out for. If I see a lot of people talking about it, I might give it a go. Next up we have Sister Maiden Monster by Lucy A. Snyder. This is an eco-crisis book. A virus is set loose upon the world, and it kind of transforms people, and so we're looking at 3 women who gather together before their transformation, and it talks about their transformation and what that does. It sounds very, very weird, and I don't know what to think of it. Like, is this literary? Is it going to be an exploration of what happens when women are no longer bound by rules and restraints? Or is it going to be like purely sci-fi and we're going to try and find a cure to this virus at some point? No idea. Moving on to the month of March, I do have a priority in here, but actually I forgot to put it on my TBR and I don't think I have the room for it, so we'll see what I end up doing with this one, and that is The Adventures of Amina El-Sarifi by S.A. Chakraborty. So S.A. Chakraborty is very well known for her Daevabad trilogy, which I mostly enjoyed, but then I absolutely hated the last book, so we're giving her another go. This is a book all about a retired pirate queen. She really had a great career as a pilot, but now she's just living in peace and quiet. However, she is recruited for one last job because the son of one, or the daughter, the child of one of her comrades was kidnapped, and so his mother kind of hires her to get this child back. And so it's basically going to look at what is this one last job, one job too many. Next up we have Feet in Silence by Lee Mandela. This is on my January TBR because I have an arc for it. This is a novella. I don't fully know neither what this one is. It seems like mystery thriller to some extent. And it's looking at this person who's really fascinated with wolves and kind of wants to get to be in sync with wolves, with the way that they think, the way that they act. She kind of really wants to explore what it would be like to live as a wolf. However, that poses difficulties within her relationship. It's a queer relationship, and also with the people who are funding her research, because the people who are funding her research could actually pose a big threat to the wolves. Next up we have Defiant by Brandon Sanderson, and it's absolutely a lie that this is in my anticipated releases for 2023 because I am dreading this book. So I am putting it there. I am hoping to build up some anticipation about it, but in all honesty, I hated Cytonic, and I've been on such a downward spiral with Brandon Sanderson that I need something to get me excited about his works again. And that something is going to be Storyline 5, but Storyline 5 we have to wait for. So I'm hoping Secret Project 1 can kind of turn things around again for me. I also still have the Lost Metal, which I also haven't picked up yet and probably won't in the near future. So I'm hoping Secret Project 1 can kind of be like, oh yeah, I do actually really enjoy his works, and then hopefully I can make myself redefine, because to be fair, I could just DNF the series at this point in time, I guess, but because it's only one more book, I feel like I shouldn't. Next up we have Gifton by Layla Susan, which is a book that I feel like I've had on my want to read list for such a long time. Maybe it got pushed back. This is a book that takes place in a desolate world. It's very difficult to get by. People really scrape around to be able to find some sort of a soil that they can plant in. Our protagonist is somebody who then has plant magic, but the gifted are basically somewhat hiding out because there's this sort of dark regime who wants to find all of the gifted people and like make them work for them. It sounds interesting, but it's probably not super high on my radar just because I don't know too many specifics about the plots. Next up we have a historical fiction. This is Dust Child by Nguyen Phan Quay Mai. That pronunciation will be completely wrong because I don't know how to pronounce those last three parts in Vietnamese. So this is a Vietnamese novel. This is a Vietnamese novel with a dual timeline. In the first timeline we're looking at two sisters during the Vietnam War. They kind of have to get around and survive. They're working at some sort of bar where American GIs often visit. And then the second timeline is looking at two American citizens going to Vietnam. One is a veteran from the Vietnam War returning to this difficult place, or this place where he had a difficult time in the past, and then the other one is a son of a mixed race couple who is looking for answers about who his parent is. Then we have A Manual for How to Love Us by Aaron Slaughter. This is a debut. These are interconnected short stories and it's said to be magical realism. This is the reason why I'm interested, but I don't know much more. Next up we have one that's on my radar because of the author, which is Evil Eye by Etaf Rum. Etaf Rum's A Woman Is No Man, I believe the title was. I read a few years ago because I got it in a book subscription box and I really enjoyed it, so I am interested in this one. The premise is a little bit vague to me. So we have our protagonist who grew up in a Palestinian American household. Her parents had a very sort of like rigorous education and like their rigorous ideas about a woman's place in the world, and so she kind of felt like she escaped that by marrying off and going into the suburbs. However, her new reality is also not turning out to be the ideal that she had always like kept ahead of herself, and then due to circumstances she's kind of, I don't think fired from her job, but she's kind of put on probation, sort of speaking, and then her mother kind of implies that that is a curse on the family. And even though she wants to deny the existence of such things as curses, she kind of finds herself wondering, what if my mother is correct? Moving on to the month of April, I do have a few priorities in here, which once again I have not added to my TBR that I'm planning yet, so my TBR for 2023 is looking horrible. So we have Secret Project 2 by Brandon Sanderson. So as previously said, I don't know more. Then we have Master of the Fallen by Justin Call. So this is the third book in the Silent God series. This is going to be a 12-part series, which is basically a villain origin series. First book being Master of Sorrows. So I did not enjoy the second book as much as I enjoyed the first one, so we're hoping that book 3 will turn things around. By the way, Master of the Fallen priority. Then we have a novella, Untethered Sky by Fonda Lee. This is a novella in which our protagonist is seeking revenge for the loss of a parent by like training to become somebody who basically flies these sort of massive birds to attack the beasts that have killed off her parents. Another priority is Greek Lessons by Han Kang. So Han Kang is an author I've previously read, which is the reason why I'm putting it here. So this is a book basically about people suffering in silence. One is a woman who's kind of lost her voice because she's going through some difficult things in her personal life. The other is her teacher of Greek, who is dealing with the loss of his eyesight. And so these two characters will kind of find common ground, I guess, and will find solace in one another. Then we have Shy by Max Porter. Max Porter wrote Lanny, which was my favorite book of 2019, I believe. All I know is that we're looking at this troubled kid who has just escaped from, I believe, a sort of like mental institution. At least the name of the place that he escaped sounds like it is that. It's something like For the Very Disturbed Children or something like that. I don't know more, I just know that he's struggling with his perception of self and the perception of others around him. But yeah, I really, really love Lanny by Max Porter. I have not enjoyed his other works as much, and so here's hoping that this is a return to what I liked about Lanny, and if not, then I guess he will not be a priority author anymore in the future, but still someone I'm keeping an eye out for. Then we have One for My Enemy by Olivia Blake. I have not read an Olivia Blake yet, and while this one sounds really interesting, I think her other book that's coming out in 2023 will probably be a higher priority for me. This one deals with rival witch clans, and witches here are definitely criminals, and so it's kind of like Green Bone Saga, a conflict between two rival clans and that escalating, and you know, the consequences of like people having to choose sides and stuff like that. However, it also mentions that there is a common enemy in the background somewhere, so maybe that will kind of bring people together a little bit again. May then is a problem. In May I want to put all of these books, all 6, as priorities. I think 5 of them absolutely are. The 6th one is a little bit lower, but the 6th one also comes out at the beginning of May, so it's probably something that I'm more likely to actually read in May already. So the one that isn't a priority, but as I said, I'm still really, really excited about this one and its potential, is The Water Outlaws by S.L. Huang. So we're looking at a Chinese world. This protagonist is like training with the army, and all she just wants to do is be like the perfect soldier. However, some guy with a grudge basically gets her like branded a criminal, and so she has to kind of go on the run, and so that's when she gets involved with these sort of like outlaws, these outlaws who are trying to fight to overthrow the empire and to, you know, get more rights for different groups of people. And as far as I could tell from like the synopsis, it also would deal with, you know, gender fluidity, or with how your gender doesn't define your roles and stuff like that. So sounds very interesting. Next up, one of the first of the 5 priorities is Yellow Face by R.F. Kuang. This is a thriller, I believe. It has to do with stolen identity, cultural appropriation, and plagiarism. So we have 2 friends who were both writers. One of them was, however, one of them kind of feels like there's no future in her writing career. She's a white woman, and she feels like nobody's interested in her stories because they're just like everybody else's. And then when her friend dies, she steals her friend's story, which was about the role of Chinese immigrants, I think, in American society or something like that. And she pretends to be Asian from that point forward, and pretends to be the original author of this work. However, after a while, this appropriation of this story starts to put her in dangerous waters. This kind of reminds me of a German book called Identity, which I haven't read myself yet, but it also deals with cultural appropriation in the academic world in that case. So I might also want to read that one, but yeah, maybe I'll have to read it afterwards. Then we have The Battle Drum by Sara El-Arifi, which is a sequel to The Final Strife. In The Final Strife, we were looking at this world where the color of your blood kind of determines your status. And at this point, earlier in the history of this world, so like 20 years in the past, let's say, a lot of children from the high-ups, from the elite people in society, were stolen and replaced by blue-blooded babies. And these original red-blooded babies were then trained to kind of infiltrate the high society at some point in time and destroy the system from within. I absolutely adored Final Strife, and so the Battle Drum is one of my highest anticipated releases for 2023, and I will absolutely be reading it within the month of May. It is coming out more towards the end, so it'll probably be the last one I read within the month of May, but I am determined to get it in there. Final day of the month of May, we also have The Witch King by Martha Wells, so it won't be read in May for me. I'll put it in June, but it's also a very high priority. This deals with some sort of a magician, I feel like, who was assassinated, and now he's kind of trapped after his death, and then he realizes that somebody's trying to steal his magic, and he kind of needs to like figure out why somebody tried to assassinate it, what happened there. It deals with pain magic apparently, and you know, apparently the answers that he's seeking might not be the answers he wants to hear. Next up we have The Will of the Many by James Islington, I think it's pronounced. Yeah, high priority, but I absolutely need to finish the third book in Lycanus trilogy as well first. But so this is the first book in a new series by him. It's got a magical academy. It's got a student who's basically sent there by his father. His brother passed away at the academy, so he wants answers to that, and his father kind of wants to figure out what the deal is with this academy, what is the political status of this academy. Now our protagonist, while he's there for these answers, he actually isn't there for the magic. He's a very reluctant student, and along the way he'll be uncovering secrets of this academy, of the people who are there, and it's a very hierarchical society. The series is also called The Hierarchy, and so there are people who want to break that hierarchy as well. And then the final one for May is A Portrait in Shadow by Nicole Jarvis. This is a fantasy novel set in 17th century Firenze, or Florence as it's called in English. It uses art magic, and so we have our protagonist who is coming over from Rome. She is clouded in scandal because she was part of a rape trial there, and so she is definitely made to feel unwelcome at the academy in Florence. They don't want to allow her and her work into their academy, and so she kind of has to fight for every sort of commission on her own, and she is definitely doing well. She is getting like work from very important figures within history. However, one particular person seems dead set on ruining her. This sounds amazing. When I reread that synopsis, I was like, ooh, yeah, definitely needs to go to the top of my TBR as well in 2023. So moving on to the month of June, I only have one book for the month of June, which is Inkblood Sister Scribe by Emma Torsts. This is a book in which we're following two sisters from a family that has a history of being these curators of magical books, magical dangerous books. And so it's kind of secret society protecting these books from being exposed to the general public, and especially from being exposed to certain criminal elements. And so at the beginning of this book, one of the sisters, who actually isn't living at the family home anymore, kind of finds she's doing research in Antarctica, and she finds like blood splatters and stuff like that, things in any case that indicate that somebody's on her trail and that the books are in danger. Moving on to the second half of the year, as the second half is further away, that also means that there are less books already announced for that part of the year, and so I have less books to go through. I will most likely do an update later in the year when I have more titles for the second half of the year. For the month of July, we have Blood Over Brighthaven by M.L. Wang. This is a new book by her. It is a standalone. It's dark academia fantasy dealing with feminism, elitism, secrets. Basically, our protagonist has worked and struggled all her life to make it into this male-centered academy, and even though she's made it to like the highest rank at this point in time, her male colleagues still go out of their way to show her that she isn't welcome. And so she's given a sort of like janitor as an assistant rather than a really qualified assistant. However, this janitor turns out to have a secret past, and for him this is the perfect opportunity to figure out what happened to his people and who attacked his people in the past. I'm currently reading Sword of Kaigen by M.L. Wang. Based on my experience with that one, this one might become an absolute priority. I'm currently really enjoying Sword of Kaigen, but we'll never know. Maybe it will still disappoint me by the end, but so currently I'm thinking that Blood Over Brighthaven will be a big priority for me. Next up we have Secret Project 3 by Brandon Sanderson coming out in July. Then You Bleeding Childhood by Michelle Marie. This is translated from the Italian. It's a short story collection. It's dark. It was compared to Stephen King. Stephen King, I always enjoy his concepts but not his execution, so I would be interested to see if this one works better for me. And then the final one for the month of July is The Deep Sky by this is not correct. This is my autocorrect that worked there. So Kitase is the last name, but I'm thinking to make Kitase, but it will be on the screen. This is a sci-fi thriller. Basically, climate change has happened. We had to send a crew out into space on the last day before our world collapsed. They are sent off to a new planet, I guess, to there reproduce the human society. However, like shortly after setting off, an explosion happens on board and they're knocked off course, and so it's a kind of game of figuring out who is responsible. I don't typically enjoy the find the culprit type of trope, but I do I can handle it a lot more in like sci-fi, for example. Moving on to August, where I have two high priorities. First one being Labyrinth's Heart by M.A. Carrick. This is to some extent an exception to what I said earlier. This is the third book in the Rook and Rose series and I still need to read the second book. But based on the first one, which I read in November, I really am excited for this series, and so I'm absolutely planning to be there in August to read this book. So it's happening. I absolutely want to read it. Rook and Rose is a series in which we're looking at our protagonist basically after her mother died had to go into this sort of like criminal society as a young girl to try and survive. She, along with two other friends she made there, end up killing the person responsible for their knot, it's called, and running away. And so a decade or so later, they've now returned to this city, to the place of the crime, kind of, because this is also the center of this world, and they are now kind of swindlers, and so they kind of want to steal the fortune of one of the families there, not realizing that this family actually is in financial difficulties. I really enjoyed it. Had a lot of like conflicting loyalties, but also like conflicting objectives. You had a lot of people who had secret agendas, and these secret agendas would sometimes mesh, sometimes clash with one another, and I really enjoyed that. It also has this sort of like Robin Hood's Zorro type character of the Rook, which I really enjoyed reading as well. So next up we get to He Who Drowned the World by Shelley Parker Chan. This is the sequel to She Who Became the Sun, which was also one of the 3 best books I read in 2021. And so I absolutely want to continue on with He Who Drowned the World. She Who Became the Sun is a historical fantasy looking at the origin of the Ming Dynasty. And so it starts off in a time in which the Mongolian army has occupied a big part of Chinese territory, and so we're looking at basically a rebellion on the Chinese side. Our protagonist is a girl who has basically taken over her brother's fate because her brother was told that he would have a glorious future and she was told that she would have none. And so when her brother and father are killed, she takes on his identity and lives as a monk in this monastery from that point onwards. It deals a lot with gender and how gender isn't something easily defined, restricted, and so how our protagonist, as she's living between two genders, is always constantly struggling with what or how to identify. Foot has fallen asleep. Final book for the month of August is Masters of Death by Olivia Blake, and this is the one that I'm more interested in because it just sounds like such a blast. So we have a vampire real estate agent, a haunted house, and a fraudulent medium who is actually like the godson, I think, of death. So it sounds great. It sounds great. I don't know more, but it sounds like a fun ride. For September I don't have any at the moment. For October I only have Secret Project 4 by Brandon Sanderson that will come out, and as I said, I know nothing about it. November then, we have 2 more books to go through. First up we have The Ashfire King by Chelsea Abdullah, which is a sequel to The Stardust Thief, another one that I read this year. It was a pleasant surprise because I knew it read quite YA for a lot of people, and I will admit that, like, I will second that. If you are a YA reader, you can absolutely read this book. It won't feel too adult, I feel like, and as an adult reader I can see that it would feel too YA. I didn't mind, maybe also because it's been so long since I read YA that it no longer bothers me all that much, I guess, but I really enjoyed it. It's a fast, fun ride, and it has its darkness in the Gollum folklore that is included within this one. So we have this girl who's called like the Midnight Merchant, and she has all of these relics that she knows how to locate because she secretly has a jinn accomplice, but the jinn are like looked down upon within the society, and basically they're like hunted down and killed, and so she cannot really inform them of that. And then she's hired by this like big jinn hunter to go and find this certain relic somewhere, and she is accompanied there by his brother, who basically has been raised in a very sheltered surrounding, and he kind of wants to explore the wide world around him. Yeah, I really enjoyed this one. I will say a few times I was kind of like disappointed because the author didn't necessarily take it to the darkest of places, which is potentially also why people say that it reads very YA, but all in all I still had a great time with this one, and I was immediately interested in continuing on when I finished. And then the final book that I have down for 2023 is Red Sides. And I didn't write down the name, apparently. Miranda Mooney, I would say, but I am gonna look it up again to be sure. No, Meredith Mooring, so I knew it was two M's, so Meredith Mooring. This was a book that I thought was going to come out in 2024, but I saw that it now has a release date for November 2023, so potentially I'm wrong here and it will go into 2024. If not, I'm super excited because I was kind of like containing my excitement there, because this is a book, a fantasy book, or like fantasy sci-fi, more or less, sci-fantasy. It has bisexual and disability representation in it, so our protagonist is blind. We are looking at this world with three differing like ideologies or religions, I guess, and our protagonist, who is blind, has this sort of magic, the red side, which is used for interstellar transportation, so space travel magic, and it is all about fighting imperial control. I was just excited about the representation. I follow the author as well on Twitter, and I'm really looking forward to some more disability representation within 2023, so I'm very happy that this book potentially got pushed forward to 2023, or that I just misremembered. But in any case, these are the books. Like, those past two books, by the way, are both high priorities for me. They're books that I do want to get around to the moment that they come out as well. So those are it. Those are the books that I have on my anticipated list for 2023. As I said, I will not be reading all of them. I definitely have some that are more a priority versus others, but I am hoping that I'll get around to most of these. And now I see that I've already filmed for 43 minutes while I was planning to keep this short. I hope editing me gets it down a little bit, but I also don't feel like I spent so much time talking when I shouldn't have been, so I'm sorry for this very long video. So in any case, definitely let me know what you are anticipating most to get around to in 2023, which is the one book that you want to get your hands on right now. In 2022 I kind of got burned on my most anticipated read. I'm hoping 2023 is an exception, because I am mostly anticipating The Battle Drum by Sada El-Arifi. That's my, I guess we will call that my most anticipated release, but as you've seen within this video, there are a lot of books that I'm highly anticipating. But so yeah, with that I'm gonna end the video here. I hope you enjoyed it, and see you guys for the next one. Bye!